Dr. Have, suppose we have a company that develops a pesticide or a herbicide that's very deadly. What do you think about them taking it to a third world country where there's no regulations to try it out?
Yeah, I would say, why do you bring it to a developing country and not try it out in your own country? Because that's the question. If you think it's good or bad for a developing country, we should be equally willing to use it in our own country. Because I think what we did in the past was to export our problems, the too risky problems, to developing countries. And I always use the example of the French. They have a large aircraft carrier, the Clemenceau, which is out of business, but it has a lot of asbestos. So they want to dismantle it. And now the Clemenceau is traveling on the seas since 5 years, looking for a country that wants to dismantle it. They first sent it to India, then they sent it to some African country. They were informed by human rights groups that they shouldn't do it. Why don't they do it in France?
I just finished reading a book called Infidel, which was by a Muslim woman who escaped to this country fighting. Her last name is A.L.I. She was born in Somalia, spent her life partly in Somalia and Kenya. Then her family, which is a high class in the Muslim society, wants her to marry this man that she detests. She escapes to Germany. She finds they can catch her there. She gets into Holland. She is against this congenital circumcision, you know. She wants Holland to abolish all religious schools because she said the Somalia women, or the Muslim women, are forced to have their children keep having this things that are present. Can UNESCO do anything about that? I mean, you said that they feel, in Holland, she feels that they should let each religious group practice the way they want to. But she feels that these Muslim women are being abused, beaten, forced into circumcision, all kinds of. So what can UNESCO do about that?
In fact, UNESCO has done a lot in a certain way. That there are a lot of documents and agreements among governments that state, for example, that you need to respect religious views, but there are also some basic human rights that are more important than the respect for the religious views. And in what they did also is to make clear that many practices in countries are more based on tradition than on religion. And essentially, there were studies about female circumcision, for example. It's not practiced in all Muslim countries. It has nothing to do with Islamic religion. It's traditional. So in countries where they do it, they defend it with religious arguments, but it's not essentially related to religion. And it reminds me to when I was young in our own country that you have many practices that were defended on a religious basis, but in fact they were not. So what UNESCO is trying to show that you should not misuse arguments of religion, either because they are not really related to religion or because they are violating human rights, because all the governments, also of Islamic countries, they have subscribed to the UN Charter. So they should respect essential human rights. Essentially, there is a problem with the place of women also. So UNESCO has now also a gender program to promote the interest of women in countries where they are not well respected.
Dr. Ten Have, I may drive you into Dutch here a little bit. And by the way, I compliment you on your English. It's much better than my Dutch. You spoke about mediating between science and policy. And you spoke also about building an infrastructure for ethical discussion. I would ask you to take the Netherlands as an example, and perhaps also specifically take the euthanasia debate as an example, and illustrate, if you can, how the Netherlands has found, if they have, some kind of a medium for bringing scientific insight to bear on what is obviously a tremendously sensitive political question.
If I understood you correctly, then you say, well, if you refer to the euthanasia debate, how is that an example of mediation? In a way, so the basic problem that the euthanasia debate tries to solve is how do we deal with suffering and dying? And the answers to that, and the way medicine is dealing with that. And the answers to this basic problem are very different in different countries. Because in the UK, the answer was the development of the hospice movement. In the US, I think, if I'm not too wrong, it was a development of non-treatment practices. In the Netherlands, it was the development of the euthanasia debate. And the explanation is difficult. Why did we went into that direction? It has to do with the, let's say, the rapid changes in society in the 60s, where we developed, transformed from a very strongly Christian nation into a very secular nation. And the euthanasia debate was an ideological symbol to show that you reject the Christian tradition. So that's why the discussion of any alternative, like palliative care, for example, was impossible for a long time, because people only wanted to focus on euthanasia. Now, the interesting thing is that since 10 years, now that the law has passed allowing euthanasia, there is more openness for alternatives. So the ideological dimension of the debate is a little bit disappearing. And it's the same, why is the ideological dimension there? For us, it's also a matter of national identity in a way, because it's more than, being Dutch means that people can assume that you are in favor of euthanasia, which is not true, because I'm not in favor of euthanasia, but it's part of the national identity. Look how open, how taboo breaking we are. And that is kind of, I would say it's more the mediation between the history of the country, which was strongly Christian. We had the highest percentage of missionaries in all countries in foreign countries, of all the European countries. So we had this idea that morally we know better than many other people. We had a colonial politics that was called a moral colonial politics, because we didn't try to change the people, we only extracted the goods and then we went home. So that's the kind of part of the identity. We are a small country, but we know better.
Thank you very much. Today at the City Club of Cleveland Forum, we have been listening to Dr. Henk A.M.J, Director of Division of Ethics of Science and Technology at UNESCO. Thank you, Dr. A.M.J. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and this forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.